Welcome to the CEO series. Our guest today is Lou Carter, CEO of Best Practices Institute. Our topic is getting organizations back on track and building a great company. To give you some background, Lou is a trailblazer in organizational development with groundbreaking research in areas of emotional connection as a means to create a positive, values-based movement inside of organizations to drive peak performance. He's the founder and CEO of Best Practices Institute and the CEO executive coach. He is the author of 11 books in leadership and management. So Lou, with that, welcome.
Ron, thanks for having me. It's always good to work with you. Thank you for having me.
So let's get started. Let's talk about, I know your latest book was in great company, how to spark peak performance by creating emotional connection in the workplace. So give us some insights on that book as to when did the thought come from to put that together?
Emotional connectedness is getting really popular these days, mostly because we're so physically disconnected. And we say with emotional connectedness, you can be physically distant, yet we don't have to be emotionally distant at the same time. Things like what we're doing right now. I'm here in the United States, here in Dubai. We're connecting. We've talked for about an hour before, discussing things, connecting on many different levels, not just Zoom in ways. It's also about the principles of the book that we looked at and that we actively exercise with clients that I recommend too for people because who are consultants or who are inside of companies, because we're having this difficulty not only connecting, even if you're physically present, or if you're physically distant, it's hard to understand really what people want and need, right? It's harder than ever. So we have an opportunity now to really dig in and be brave and courageous and ask the questions and be real about what we want and need. Emotional connection is just about that. It's about about asking for what we want and need and being courageous in what we really mean. I used to work with Chris Argyris, who created Model 1, Model 2, Model A, Model B, double loop learning. One thing I did for him when I designed a lesson for him once. And I said, look, I love this thing, Model A, Model B, but you can teach it, but let's try it. So Model A is what I mean, what I say, right? What I say. And then Model B is what I mean by what I say. So I can say something like, you know, I just talk about Scott. Like, I really love your hair. You've got a lot of hair. Scott, who I work with, it's amazing. What I'm really saying is, I don't have much hair. I'm really mad at you because you have more hair, right? So emotional connectedness is saying the latter. It's saying courageously, saying, you know what? How did you get so much hair? And then now automatically we're seeing what's different and real between us, right? So emotional connection is about stepping into your courage, being real about who you are, and then aligning with other people in a way that enables you to be able to help them as much as they be able to help you.
Well, you know, I read an article from McKinsey, I think it was last night, about CEOs understanding this new concept of work and how the role that they're going to play with the C-suite. So that's a discussion from a C-suite level and it trickles down, cascades down, or how do we have this kind of a conversation inside of a workplace?
So the big deal is that happened today is that we're looking at the easy ways out. We're grabbing culture blueprints. We're saying, how do we bring people together to talk about culture change? And we say, oh, we hear people saying strategic speed or execution or just stuff that they hear and they say, well, we'll put it in our leadership development program and all of a sudden things will be great. Check the box, right? But they're wrong. There can be more wrong than that. So if you want to drive change from C-suite down, you can't be just grabbing stuff on the internet and putting it down. You have to find the right stuff. And the right stuff is all about positive, forward-thinking, emotionally connected, visionary work. You'll actually find on the web, which I found, a culture blueprint that has, ironically, a heart in the middle. And right below the heart is behaviors that we punish and behaviors that we reward. Okay. So, holy cow. So first of all, what do they mean by punish? And what do they mean by reward? I want to know what dictatorship that is, because I want to stay away from North Korea. And so you know, Kim Jong-il, I didn't sign up for that regime last time I checked. So, you know, there really is a lot of pervasive thought around carrot and stick approach that doesn't make its way to the front lines. It just doesn't make its way. What makes its way to the front lines is open dialogic communication, where they design it. And they have a very simple blueprint for, this is where we are, this is how we feel about how we are, where we are, courageously. These are the steps we need to take to get to this future state. And this is why we need to go where we need to go, right? The vision of why we need to go where to go. So let's take an example. Let's say that the company is having high growth, which there are companies now who are resilient, who have high growth. They're hockey stick companies, right? They're going up because they were resilient because their financial acumen during the past 5 years, 10 years, they were able to create good cash reserves. They were able to invest some of their reserves into high yield funds, work with the right people, and also increase their credit line. These are the brilliant CEOs of the 21st century, right? So who are the CEOs who didn't do quite as well? They're the ones who didn't have the great credit lines. They're the ones that didn't increase their financials. They're the ones that didn't strengthen their collaborations with external partnerships. So sorry, guys. Now,
those are the ones that we see on the news at night when they're announcing bad news.
we don't want to blame them though, right, Ron? I don't want to blame you guys. I know it's tough. I know you're getting funds right now. You're getting help. You're getting back up. You know, I do feel for you, and you're on what we call a more of a decline trajectory, which can loop back up around. So you're in a loop trajectory. Okay. So I say there's hockey sticks and there's loops. You're just going through a loop. Now, loopers and hockey stickers pretty much have the same thing they need to focus on. They need to focus on how to create that love in the workplace, because other people externally, your brand needs to remain consistent, whether you restructure and cut 20,000 people and your top leaders and you put new people in to the top level positions, or if you remain where you're at and generate a lot of cash and are in the hockey stick level, right? Okay. You still need both. You still need to create that culture and enable that great employer brand, whether you're going down or whether you're going up. It's okay. So you still need to drive to the front lines and do it with the ability to look at the front positive vision for the future, allow the front lines, the middle and the up to define it, right? Usually it's up, middle, down, and drive it with key results and volunteer objectives that they can actually accomplish. I can speak more to that in terms of how to do it. So go ahead, Ron. Yep.
You know, I was going to ask, what are some common themes as you deal at that level, the C-suite level? What are some common themes that when you have this kind of conversations, what is the reaction coming back? Do they see it as something value that they can bring inside of their organization, or do they see it as kind of pie in the sky kind of?
So the first thing that people look toward is financial performance. Done. It's it. Okay. They're going to look at financial performance. That's the top line thing that everyone looks at. And in HR, which I know I'm talking to a lot of people in HR, oftentimes we have the question of seat at the table. I know that's often used. We have a question of, we're the ones who are bullied around the most. We're the ones that are slapped around the most to say, hell, go take care of this, go take care of that. And it couldn't be, you couldn't be in a better position right now to say, let's talk about top line growth. Let's look at where you're at, right? And then we can talk about culture. We can talk about what people want to achieve. Because right now, if you're at home or whether you're there, right, there is a definitive problem. And all CEOs will say this. I challenge any CEO who does not say this statement. I don't know what my people are doing really. So I say, in a pool of CEOs, a sea of CEOs, how many of you really know what your people are doing and achieving, right? How many? 9 out of 10 of them are going to raise their hand. The 1 out of 10, they're lying. And they're the ones who go on the shows and say, I'm great, I won these awards.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm the leader.
I'm the leader. I'm it. I'm incredible. There's no incredible leader. There really isn't. There's not the incredible, omniscient, incredible, king, right, of all leaders. It just doesn't exist. And if they think they are, then they're not agile enough to move forward. So is there appetite for this? Yes. the way to present it is really as a partner. Don't go against your CEO. I've seen so many CHROs go against their CEO and they say, everyone can't stand you. They're going to blame you. We blame you. You don't say nice things. You're mean and you're mad. Wrong. You take the wrong approach. You start with blame. You're going to end with blame. And you're not going to stay in there. You're going to get kicked out of the office. What do you mean? Hey, Ron, you know, someone comes to me, they say, I can't stand you, which some people do. They really don't like me. I say, okay, bye. I don't need you in my life.
Yeah.
Ron, you're a good friend. I'd always welcome you everywhere because we're friends. We respect each other. Why would a CHRO be invited into a CEO's office when they have news about how much other people can't stand them? Mm-hmm. Approach with data, approach with perception, and then say, okay, here it is. I'm going to give it to you. Now let's talk about the cost benefit. Which one do you want to change for you in your life? Which one do you want to change that you think is directly attributed to the things that the board of directors really appraises you on? And then let's make a connection, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. And usually BODs analyze on leadership, culture, and number one, financial leadership, financial acumen, financial performance. That's number one. You look at a lot of the board of directors appraisals, and I've done a lot of research on board of director appraisal of CEOs. The largest part of the board of director appraisal is financial performance. It's like 20 questions. I recommend 6 competencies related to financial performance. And then I ask the board of directors, hey, of these 5 competencies, which of these connect to financial performance? And if they have one that doesn't, we throw it out. Yeah. And I say, okay, of these 5 competencies, okay, now let's change them. What you think we should do better. Now, how do they connect to financial performance? So all HR people, I'm giving you one of the things that I say to everybody, connect to financial performance. Look at the things that people are saying perception-wise that might hinder your ability to achieve financially. Change it, because that's the cost benefit.
You know, you mentioned something about when you mentioned competencies. I did some work for a company in Asia, in the APAC region, and we were discussing reviewing their competencies. And I asked the question, when was the last time these were reviewed? Nobody in the room could tell me when or how they came up with those, but they're still using it. So when you look at what companies are going through now, this COVID experience, what do you think about competencies in the new world of work? Should that also be analyzed and looked at, based on some research that you may have done from your side? Or do we still continue to same competencies we had before 5 years ago? We still keep walking along with the same ones.
HR, you're in the new age. You're in the new age. This is the time to renew. This is it. So whatever competence you had, you can work with them. They're okay to have. So having that, so you take what you have, pare them down to like 2 to 6, literally, because there's rater fatigue and people can't remember any more than 7 for anything. So Stephen Covey told us that 7 habits highly effective people, right? 7. And then we pared that down in our age of the internet to about 3, right? So lately it's become 3 as the top number. You look at anything on the internet right now on the web, if you ever write an article or a listicle, write 3 of anything, people will remember all 3. And you see any thought leader, they'll say 3. They'll say something like this. They'll go people, processes. What the heck? What's the last one, Ron? And the people, processes, and productivity. People, process, productivity.
3 P's.
Say cost, right, exactly, 3 P's. And they say criticism, cost, and construction. Look, here's the thing. Words are not what it's about. What it's about is what we create with it. So we put those 3 to 6 in front of people, and we say, okay, what do you appreciate the most about these? What could be done better with these, right? Do well, do better. And then we say something very important, which is how do they connect to financial performance, right? So now we've taken something that really is social, right? Something that about emotional connectedness, the values, the collaboration, the emotional intelligence, the empathy, the emotional regulation, right? The vision for the future. And we connect it to outcomes. So what was typically fluffy can now be scientifically connected to financial performance. Now you're on the table. Now you're on the table, and you have your hands waving. You're no longer at the table, and so you're now on the table. So totally, whether again you're a loop company or hockey stick company, you have to renew and revitalize, recreate those competencies, and connect them to financial performance. And you don't do it. You don't connect it. Your people connect it with you in a designed communication, a design meeting that they design with you with that purpose.
You've been anchoring on data. You've been anchoring on evidence. And I remember reading an article last year, and it's talked about HR as evidence science, evidence-based. I remember reading the findings behind Project Oxygen, and the gentleman who talks about it, his name is Brian Ong. He continually said that here, we have to prove everything with data, everything with some type of evidence. We just can't come in and say this approach will work, because the audience is going to say, based on what? How did you arrive at that? So walk us through. You talked about, and I know you have the MLW concept, most loved workplace concept. Can you connect that to data and what data has shown you from doing these over and over every year? And so what can we learn from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what MLW allows us to do is give 2 points of data. The first is the survey. So we say organizational survey that's done on a longitudinal basis. Number one, how are things going in the 5 areas? Systemic collaboration, positive future, vision of future, alignment of values, respect of each other, and killer outcomes. So 5 different areas, and they're totally everything's in my book, In Great Company. You literally can go to In Great Company, go to the back, and it's got all it has my actual survey in it. No, you got it too. Okay, so you actually can go to literally, I think it's page, yeah, here it is, 204, and it's the actual research behind it. I give it away. Nobody does that. Other companies don't give away their surveys. I do. So it's really there. And so there's that you do that longitudinally to see where things are at, so you can determine really the degree to which your culture is connected to those financial performance killer outcomes. And that's number one. There's a number 2 part of this, which kind of validates that, which nobody else has done before, which is this. There's a lot of perception data out there on the internet, a lot. So you could set a Google alert on your CEO. You could just go to Google Alert and your Google right now, Google Alert, and then put in, then in your Google Alert, put in your CEO's name. Now, anytime that your CEO is mentioned, it'll come up in the news, all right? Your PR department knows this. You'll be way ahead of your PR department if you do this, by the way. They may not know how to do it, or they may. So what we've done is we created a tool that scrapes right below the web. The web is basically like an iceberg. There's public, there's kind of moderately public, and then there's surface web, and then there's dark or deep web. And there's enormous amounts of data and information and chatter that happens on the web about your CEO and company, especially if you're mid-sized or large company. And if you're small too. So if you're even those plumbing companies or electrical companies, there's a lot of stuff that's said about you. So imagine that in scale, right? To 200,000 person company globally, a million employee person company. Guess what? There's a lot of information about you. So we did a scraping tool that scrapes all the information related to what is in Great Company, which is about how does your CEO collaborate? How do people like to collaborate in your culture? Is anybody who really feels disrespected in your culture? So we actually look for words related to disrespect, and we scrape based upon that word. And then we spit out a rating on it, a scale of 1 to 5, how they're doing. And some qualitative information too, saying, hey, this is how you're doing on it. So instead of just saying, hey, take the survey and they stack it with their best 300, which everybody does in these surveys, they're like, yeah, let's give them our best 300 people that love us and won't say anything bad about us. So we say, we're going to find out what others think about you. That who are very honest and due to what we were saying before, the second model of the courageous conversation. That's good data.
So you also mentioned I'm a big fan of Google Alert. I have so many Google Alerts. When I get up in the morning, I have to kind of filter through which one am I going to deal with today, and so I'm a big fan of that. And I always tell people that if you're looking to follow something, just create a Google Alert in quotes, and every time it's mentioned, it's going to pop up. And it's probably one of the greatest tools ever. You talked about 5 key principles: collaboration, optimism, values, respect, and performance. Can you connect those for us?
Yeah. So what happens is, let's say you do your culture survey for MLW to become a most loved workplace. This is how you have to think about it. If you could choose anything that seems positive. And by the way, we found that. We actually did, this study was a substantial study. It's a peer-reviewed study. It's in Leader Journal. We did themed analysis of all the words connected to prior research. If you've been in HR for a while, there's one thing you'll know. It all sounds the same. Okay, so a lot of stuff is gobbledygook, right? Collaboration, be positive, be emotionally regulated. It's all about how well did that individual or thought leader market themselves and pay money to actually put themselves into the marketplace. So not unlike Coca-Cola. So, emotional intelligence is the Coca-Cola of the HR world, right? The Pepsi might be an emotional quotient. I don't know. So who do you like better, EI or EQ? So what is important about this construct is that you realize that it's a data gathering method, okay? So it gives you intelligence into your company. No matter what it says, even though this one was verified and validated, it's gonna give you rich information as to which area is most in need. So in the case, I'll give you a case that we had. It was a large manufacturing company, can't say who it is. They were low on positive vision for the future. Now that translated interestingly in their company. Turned out that people were leaving at the second year at the company, and they loved it at the second year. And the people who were staying were saying they had a horrible vision of their future. So they couldn't see a career at the company. They couldn't see where the company was moving, not just financially, also as a purpose or vision in life, and for their values as people getting up in the morning, wanting to do the work, wanting to be and feel innovative and be psychologically safe, which is a big concept in it, to innovate and create with each other. So we said, okay, people are leaving and they're super happy. The rest of your people, which is about 120,000, can't stand it there. So those are kind of interesting things that happened. We found out when people hate their company, when most people hate the company, 2 out of 10 leave, the other 8 stay and make each other's lives a living hell.
Exactly.
Really sucked for most people. And the company declines in culture, and it also declines in financial performance. We found a positive correlation between culture and financial performance. And you could do that study yourself. You don't have to wait. Evidence-based, as Ron said, is based upon each company. You don't have to wait to create, just do. And you're going to find exactly what's new in your culture.
So when you run a survey, that survey is in-house and not external, correct?
Right. So you do an in-house survey, exactly. And you get up to 33% of your population.
Okay.
And then you run a separate, I guess it's like a construct validity or weighting analysis that we would do to check out all of the negative and positive reviews in the web to weight those variables appropriately. So give you a real view, an accurate view.
Okay.
You need that accurate view, which is more like you said, Google Alerts. We created our own scraping tool, to actually, like Google, to grab stuff from the past. It's not just future, it's grab stuff from the past.
Okay. So that scraping tool, that's your IP. Is that available outside of?
It is. Yep, it is, and it'll be released coming up soon. Coming up. I guess this is like pre-marketing. We're going to be releasing that.
Okay, cool. That's okay. That's okay, because we need to know these kind of things. Well, the other thing that the more I read about post-COVID employee experience, I look back at customer experience, CX. So there's a lot of research on CX. And I'm thinking, if we took the same approach from CX and applied it to, I don't want to use the word human capital, but the employee experience, there's a lot of insight could come about as a result of that. You know, because I read an article last night, the once a year employee survey, the once a year performance management system. Post-COVID is going to be once a year, or can we pulse that throughout?
So this is good. The way to kind of think about the employee satisfaction, and I think the article that you read too last night, probably what it alluded to is that it shouldn't be once a year. It shouldn't be this huge rate of fatigue, right? It should be really weekly. It should be during weekly meetings. We should have the check-ins in the right way, right? We have team awareness of satisfaction, company-wide awareness of satisfaction, company-wide and team determination of what needs to happen to change that satisfaction, and then follow up to actually do it and become accountable for those changes of behavior. So we're failing when it comes to that once a year. That's a failure. That's an epic fail by HR, is to give that once a year. A success factor is to bake it into your meetings. By the way, you're more important when you do that to your company. You become more of the fabric of your company when you take part in more active data analysis and creation of changes and track those changes over time. Become valuable by becoming part of your own process and others' processes.
Yeah, but see, the conundrum with that is you've got to consistently pulse. You know, I always use the analogy: you stay in a hotel, you check out on a Friday, by Wednesday of the following week, you're going to get an email that says, how did we do? What can we do to improve? And I've always liked that model because on a weekly basis, aggregate across the globe, if it's a major change, they can pretty much pull up, make adjustments, and make a lot of changes as to customer satisfaction, return business. All kinds of things can come in as a result. Again, evidence-based. Here's what the numbers show us. You can say what you want. You could have been in the business for 20 years, but here's what the numbers say.
Absolutely. And customer experience is a great way to describe this, because if we look at employees like customers, we're actually helping them to be the providers to customers even better. So CBS Undercover Boss, right? You've heard of that show.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that show is that they actually see what happens with their employees in a bird's eye view, right? So imagine flipping that switch for employees and saying, now you're going to be actually not just observing, but being the customer. Okay, so you're going to the hotels. You're becoming a customer. Tell us how your experience was. Now you go back to the office as an executive, and you start seeing things differently. Your viewpoint, your vantage point changes, not just for the customer, but for each other, how you're experiencing each other, getting things done, enabling and executing on what you need to do, right, with each other, not just as customer. Because now you know, oh, that customer really did wait 4 minutes because the front of the office were thinking about a million things and they were scattered with the thoughts coming into them. Guess what? That's actually happening at the top. We have the same problem. So chances are what's happening at the top is also happening in the front lines. So be careful of what I say, pay attention to what you pay attention to, right? Pay attention to what you pay attention to, because what you're doing every day and paying attention to every day is guaranteed to be happening in the front lines with customers. Use the same tools, as Ron's saying, for customers as you do with employees. Things will change, things will shift, your mindset will shift in terms of your impact on customers.
Yeah. Do you notice that the C-suite is getting a little more open to listen to these kind of ideas? As you mentioned earlier about COVID was probably outside of the ramifications that happened. It was kind of a wake-up call for organizations to rethink everything.
They really did. The CEOs were in a place where they could be at a control center. and they could see how things could change, and they saw how people reacted under pressure. They saw if they hoarded a certain thing, a certain outcome, and they said, "This is mine. Don't everybody take it." And they didn't take in information and input from others. And they saw those people have their sort of worst days, right? They had their worst days. And then they saw people who shined, who said, "Let's all do this together." So it gave CEOs and top leaders, CEOs, the opportunity to get a nice diagnostic of their company. And a lot of them are at a place now, and I talk to, of saying, I want to fire 30% of them because 30% of those people didn't help me at a time of need, and they hid from me. Now, this happens in times of war. This happened for generals, for colonels, where they see people leaving, they hide, and those are the people who are hiding, who didn't help, who retreated, who most CEOs want to kick out of their company. And I don't blame them. Okay, I really don't. And the other end of the coin is the CEO who had massive growth and had people stay at their homes or came into their organization. They spent the money they needed to spend. They enabled a great culture. They recreated what they needed. And now you're at a good place right now, but hang on, slow down. I know you're good because you're ready to go. Now you need to redefine even more and make sure that front line, the C-suite, all of your directors and your top and your executive committee and your board are super aligned and feeling good, because what happened yesterday may not happen today or the day after. Okay, always be aware of what's around you. Okay, always. And then when we talk, we're going to talk about that, how you're feeling about what's happened around you. Only the paranoid survive, right? Well, it's okay that you're paranoid. All right, you know a lot, you see a lot. Let's talk about it. Let's get to a place where we can see around the corners, and then we can start understanding what you need to do moving forward. The micro movements. It's not about all of these huge movements. It's the micro movements right now. Okay, so it's great to have big picture thinking, be great in strategic thinking, and be collaborative with and financially sound. It's important though to make sure those micro movements and goals are achieved. And most CEOs should be thinking about Q4. We're at this place. Just think about Q4 right now. We're at this incredibly important few months before Christmas with COVID, right? And so, and with an election coming up. Okay, Q4 is important. We have to make certain that our people are goal-oriented right now. They're not thinking pie in the sky. How are we going to create because of COVID? You got something right in front of you. You have to address it head on. Okay, so whether that's completing an implementation or to achieve a certain financial outcome, because there's a lot of financial outcomes you need right now, COVID, and there's deadlines for them for most companies. So what's your job right now? Keep people focused to get them done. So stop them. It's all this stuff happening around them in their lives, and they're not taking care of themselves or whatever it may be. You gotta stop that immediately. HR, CEO, help them stop it. Whatever you can do to help them get focused to get to your outcomes. Your company depends upon it, your employees depend upon it, and your financial performance depends upon it.
You mentioned self-awareness, and that can be a topic by itself, because lots of times you see leaders that have risen to the top, and their thought is that I've gotten here because I'm good at what I do. That could be true. But there's always could be a lot of areas that they can improve upon. So in looking at COVID and realizing that maybe empathy is a big thing that I've got to exhibit or show to my people, and I've never done that because for me it may have been all about the numbers and very tactical. And how would you coach a leader to change a leadership competency and move to another realm of explore something about themselves? Could be a shortcoming or whatever.
Yeah. So I do have one leader I'm working with. I can speak to him.
Okay.
So about what he's doing, I can't say who it is.
Yeah.
I can say what it's like. So this individual has actually changed. The CEO asked that I work with this person, and at the top, and he was seen as unempathetic, non-empathetic to people, and it was getting in the way of him becoming transformational, which is what you need to do in a C-level role. You can't be a transactional leader in a C-level role. You have to think about the future. You have to think about how to really clearly articulate information in a way that anyone can understand it. So the empathy wasn't there. So it was more like, do that. If you're not doing this, then you should do that. It was completely transactional. So here's my tip. What I did was we took situations that he was going through that other people were angry about. So, and I actually took about 6 tries, called meta thinking. You think about what you're thinking about. So we took about 6 tries to get to this, which was funny. I said, well, let's just think about this. In this case, how would you feel if this happened to you? He said, well, I know it's the policy. And I said, well, what if you knew there was a policy and yet you were still upset? Well, I still understand that this needed to happen. Okay, I said, so let's say it does need to happen. And how would you feel, and then you go to the next level about how that person does, how would you feel if that threatened your job, right? Okay. So then he said, okay, now I get it. I don't want anybody to threaten my job. I said, okay, you have kids. Does the other person have kids? The other person had kids. So how would you feel if you could no longer give your children food or the toy for Christmas? He said, okay, so are you getting through to me now? He said, you're getting through to me now. And he said that. So we made that part of his, it was like 3-point plan of empathy. He didn't need emotional regulation. He was fine with that one. He was all good. Because he just like looked at literally like, nope, check box. He needed that. So meta thinking is really good. The thing with meta thinking is when you coach somebody on meta thinking, you have to think about really what is the consequence of that person's actions in a way that impacts them in a personal way. So you can't just go to the policy or the practice or the business. You got to go to impact of that person and then do it for yourself as a coach. Say, how will that impact you? Then redirect it and to that individual. So it's kind of like a triangle, right? You're working through yourself, right? You're saying, I can myself be the person that channels this empathy.
Two areas I wanted to cover. One was the questions as you walk through that model and you talk about the questions you ask. And I always tell people, always be aware of the questions you ask, because if you're trying to get to the bottom of something, root cause, you have to ask the right questions to get the right answers. And I think lots of times, specifically people in human resource, they just have a conversation. No, that has to be a strategic conversation. It has to be driven. You have to have a list of 4 or 5 questions that you have to ask so that when you walk out of that door in 50 minutes, you've got everything that you need. And I think lots of times that's kind of, I'm just going in and have a conversation. I'm asking questions. There's no connection between, you walk through a flow. You walk through here, and eventually open up and say, okay, now I see what you're talking about. So that was cool.
So one thing with the questions, Ron, I just speak real quickly to the questions. So I think that's it's relevant. It's relevant what you're saying. I change active questions to active statements.
Okay.
So it's harder. It's hard when Socrates had this whole thing that if I question people, they're going to answer them and they'll learn better, right? Socrates he'd be like lowest performer today. He'd be a terrible teacher today because he would get people to be really pissed off about learning. He'd make them more anxious. He'd make them feel kind of not so smart, right? Because questions say, do you know what the answer to this is? Statements say, this is what I'm going to say. Okay, so it gives you the opportunity it's a cue to a state, to an answer. You question someone, you may win or lose. You cue someone, you're directing and you're inviting them to give you a better outcome. And when you connect that statement cue, to something that's positive rather than negative, then you're doing something that will enable them to like say, wow, that's really cool. I want to answer that. So what are you more apt to answer in statement? This is what I really hate about you. The thing I most hate about you is, versus the thing that I appreciate about you the most is, and the advice I have for you to get better at this, which is the thing I hate about you really is, right? So we're
kind of opposites.
It's opposite. Why are we looking at the things that we do wrong and the things that we should punish when it increases our amygdala response, makes us want to have to regulate our emotions, it hurts us all. Just chill, everybody. Relax a little bit. The best CEOs I know are relaxed. They're able to be cool with people, really, and connect. You know, so many people are so angry and anxious. It's about my career. I got to make a great career. Cool it. This is a time to grow, to renew, to revitalize. It's not a time to bear down and start throwing left and right jabs.
Yeah. The other point I wanted to ask about is the emotional connected leader, the ECL 360. This 360 approach that you've designed. Can you walk us through that?
Absolutely. So all of the work that we do is based upon not just is self-awareness, but also other awareness. So this is what's important about 360. People think 360s are just about the self and the individual and the gap between the two. They just, right? It's like, what's that gap? Is it here or is it here? I don't think of it like that at all. So in fact, I flip it around and I say, look, that may exist. There may be a lot of difference between what you think about yourself and what others think. Or maybe you think you're great and other people don't, or other people think you're great and you don't. It's all irrelevant, okay? It's data, but it's irrelevant. What matters is, what are the most important behaviors that connect to the results that you require in your company, okay? And what is the cost of changing them and the benefit of changing them? That's it, okay? So the ECL 360 is about being emotionally connected to what others are saying about you and what you say about yourself, because some things may or may not be true, and what other people saying may or may not be true, and changing them to connect cost benefit wise to the things that you need to achieve the most, and making it simple and doing it daily, actively, and having others help you become more accountable for that. If you don't have supporters in helping you for that, no one's going to help you. Okay. So you need supporters, and you need them to stay with you on a monthly basis to help you get better.
Okay. So is that a part of the love workplace?
It is.
Is that a part? So it's kind of a two-pronged. So we do the audience or employee base, and then for leadership, we do the 360 approach.
Exactly. We do the 360 approach. They're balanced so that leaders can lead this most loved workplace, and the organization itself will show those changes.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
So the other key point, the other point that I read about was the Emotional Connectedness Index, ECI.
The ECI is based on is a most loved workplace. It's an index that shows it's I was just describing before, longitudinally how things change.
Okay.
In those 5 areas. And so that will give you an index as to how emotionally connected your workplace is. We have an exercise that's done just in teams. So we talk about evidence-based, where I say, I'm Bob, I'm connected to Sally, this amount, right? I believe I am, because everybody has a different perception of what emotional connectedness means. So we have to tackle that first. So what is it? What does it mean? And then we say, okay, what degree do you feel that way toward that person? And it's a sort of a length of line. So it becomes like an interconnected web or weave, a network of people, and how emotionally connected they are to that point. How emotionally connected are you to your team, to your company?
Give us a success story that you went in as a consultant, and it was kind of one of these workplaces nobody wanted to be there, and you were able to use your tools and insight to kind of turn it around. Can you walk us through an example of that?
Yeah. So here's one. All right. So there's a company I was working with. It was a mid-sized company, and the executive team was loosely connected to each other. Okay. So they had a lot of paranoia. They were wondering if people were going to hurt them, harm them, take their job. And this is a group of 12 people. The board itself was constantly at their throats and asking them to do things, and jabbing at them. And so what needed to happen was a balance of power. Okay, so power needed to be balanced, not only between the executive team, the committee, but also the board, right? And this was a while ago. This is about 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, it was a while ago. So this was pre-COVID. It's pre everything. So different situation, not current at all. 5 years ago. So what we did was first find commonalities in board and executive committee. Okay, and we said, what are the things that we find are true of each other that we find in ourselves as well? We made them into jokes. So we structured jokes. So there's the 2-3 punch joke. 2-3 punch joke is something like this. Tell me 3 things that we should be focusing on now. That we should you should ask yourself questions on. Okay, tell me. Here's the 3 questions. We did a question approach because it's something that will make people angry the most. The 3 questions are: what are the things that I most want to change about my relationship? Right. That's number 1. Number 2? What is the thing that I need to do to change within this relationship? And number 3, why does air conditioning always go out in my office? I'm too damn hot. All right, so that's a 2-3 punch. All right, so So there's a lot of tension that happens in in this company, and what we're doing is creating a release of tension through the development of jokes, comedy. And so the beginning would be that. We'd open with, everyone would create their own jokes. And then we create a joke about each other that is more relevant to their specific trades, okay? So if you're, in this case, there was engineers, okay? It was engineers, and there was people on the board who were also engineers and who had worked for engineering companies. So we had engineer jokes, okay? So that opened up stuff. Boom, boom, boom. Now we're cracking away at the egg. Now we're getting in the egg. Now it's time. So now it's time to do the culture blueprints. Now it's time to create the activity-based planning. Go to the top and talk about what they need to do to get better. And they met periodically throughout the year on the goals and what they needed to do to change for the behaviors. And by the end of the year, this company loved each other. They wanted to help each other. And everything they did, they no longer went and they yelled at each other when times were rough. They had their jokes on hand. They had their understanding of each other. They empathized about themselves and their families. They opened up about what their values were. So you have to start with something that disarms. Yeah. Disarming is important. Everybody's got their gun when they start. Everybody. They got a gun, they got a knife, whatever they got. Everybody did. By the way, if you think they don't, they think, oh, they got their fist. Some people just got the gloves on. I think Ron and I are boxers.
Always looking for a fight. Always.
It's the truth. It's the truth. So we have to disarm. People need to be disarmed. Yeah. And we want to be. We don't want to fight. Nobody wants to fight.
Yeah.
Nobody really truly wants to fight unless you're a prize fighter. You're gonna get paid money. But I bet our best prize fighters, even, I don't think they wanted to.
It's just a job.
Just a job. So once we disarmed these people, they felt good. They felt good, and they were jamming on their growth trajectory. That's what's important. They started jamming, and they went up. They hockey sticked it.
Yeah.
Largely due to the CEO, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, the CEO. It starts and ends with them. That's who did it. The CEO did it. I don't care what anybody says. That CEO did it. So without that CEO, it would have been nothing. As much as they blamed him for all these things, and they were no reason to blame that CEO. That CEO is responsible for that trajectory. And I guess again, 5 years ago, so a while ago.
Yeah. Well, I'm reading a book. I just finished reading a book today, The $1 Trillion Coach, Bill Campbell. And one of the things that he talked about is that C-suite, team suite, or whatever you want to call it, is building a relationship. And he worked with the founders of Google, the guy from Apple, And he talked about that same thing, but in a different context of every meeting had to start off with, the meetings were Monday morning, start off with telling everyone what they did for the weekend. And after a period of time, everyone got to see a different side. So it was kind of understanding a 360 approach to a person, whereas your approach could have been based on 9 to 5. I know the deliverables, I know I deal with you because we have to interact on this project, whatever it is. But the other learning that came from that, and everyone resisted up front, but after a certain period of time of doing that, it was kind of a way for everyone to relax and really understand that this person is really into coaching his daughter's soccer team, or something as small as that.
That's right. It's such a great example because of the weekend exercise, because at first you are going to be tested as an HR person. They're going to say, I'm not doing this. Or some people may not want to do it at all. That's okay. Stay to it. Keep doing it. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just don't stop. And that's the most important part is that if you have an activity, you have a facilitated exercise, you have an idea, don't give up on it because 20%, 15% of people don't want to do it. You know, you give in too much. Don't give in.
Yeah.
If you believe in something, you believe in activity, like Ron was just saying, look at the success of that activity. And your ideas will drive change. And Ron's idea there was very specific. Everybody talks about what they did over the weekend.
Yep.
Okay, and look what happened there. It changed the culture.
It changed the culture. And so the C word, culture, it's being talked about a lot. So I said, if you had some semblance of a culture coming into it, you're a little stronger coming out of it. But if your culture was damaged coming into it, you've got a lot of work to do. You started from ground zero, a minus ground zero, because you didn't take that into effect. So what kind of advice would you, for an organization that's trying to get back on track, how could we do this? Because there's pressures of getting their business back on track. There's pressures of revenue, P&L, people, empathy, but we don't have a culture. It's dog eat dog. It's just kind of,
So my suggestion now, because I know, Ron, yours is strategy focused HR, and it's with strategy focus, it's important because, culture is as good as its connection to what the company needs to accomplish. Okay, so culture is as good as what the company needs to accomplish. So I'll make it shorter. So its connection to what the company needs to accomplish. So if you go in and start just one little exercise, like Ron said, that's great, wonderful. And if you connect it to volunteerism goals that people can achieve and then measure them, now your culture is becoming results-based or results-based culture. So you balance it with an empathetic, emotionally regulated, empathetic culture that Ron's talking about with objectives, key results that people volunteer to actually create to get to a certain result. My suggestion right now is to focus it on Q4 and the goals they need to accomplish, and have people volunteer as a team to do things to get to that point so they feel like they've accomplished it as a unit.
Okay, cool. Scott, how can the listeners get in contact with you guys to get more information, or the website, or can you give us those?
Absolutely. You can all reach us at lewiscarter.com. There's resources on there. We have culture mapping, blueprints, all of Lou's articles. There's a leadership assessment as well that we recommend everyone come in and take it. You can see where you stand right now and start the process.
And it's free, right?
It is free. Yep,
okay.
Absolutely. And they can come in. And then at Most Loved Workplace, they can start the process of looking at their organization as well and getting them to become that Most Loved Workplace for themselves, their employees, and their candidates.
Okay. Let me just ask you a question, Scott. For the Most Loved Workplaces, is that we submit and we wait until the findings, or do we get it back right away, or is it yearly big event?
Yep. That's an annual process. It's at mostlovedworkplace.com. It's a very nominal fee to be able to go through the certification, and it allows you to start and get a baseline and then move through to become Most Loved Workplace. And the Spark model that Lou talked about that was in great company will identify the voids, the areas that need improvement, and then work you through. And we have certified coaches that we work with as well that will help bring you through, as well as us. So it's all there at mostlovedworkplace.com. All the research is there as well. You can see that for free, all peer validated, and then really start the process of getting in, pulsing your employees and seeing where you stand, where you need to get to, and become a certified Most Loved Workplace.
Okay, so if a company went in and they submitted everything and they came back, maybe the scores weren't that great, but they really wanted to understand how to become that most loved workplace, you have a facilitation process that you put them through. Absolutely. To make sure that they move to that certified level. That's correct?
Exactly right. Yep, and it'll focus in those areas that need improvement, so it'll really highlight and drill down into it.
Okay, cool.
Global organizations as well. There's a global. We've done it throughout the world as well. So.
Yeah, so the people throughout the globe, like Ron and others, people in APAC. If you're global with HQ in the US, you have people throughout the world who can help you with your various divisions around the world.
Okay, cool. Lou?
Yep.
Thank you so much for this informative conversation. It's been great. I think organizations are going to have to kind of throw away the prior blueprint and kind of look to see how can we start this thing over. And you gave us a lot of insight, as it relates to that. So thank you very much, Scott. Thank you for setting everything up, and we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Awesome to see you, Ron. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye, guys.
Okay.